Legend, presented by T.A. Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
The food service industry is notoriously difficult to navigate. Success is hard, and the pandemic made things even more challenging, not only due to temporary closures, but also the changed behaviors of consumers. Here to discuss a platform built specifically to assist restaurateurs is the co-founder and CEO of Bikky, Mr. Abhinav Kapur. Welcome to the show, Abhinav.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So if you wouldn't mind starting off by elaborating, if you would, on my introduction, why is the restaurant industry so hard to find success in, and how did that lead to your creation of Bikky?
Yeah, it's honestly a great question. So my story starts with my mother-in-law. She was a restaurant operator here in New York City for 20 years. And so just seeing kind of what she had to do to turn, as a first-time operator, to turn it into a 2-star New York Times rated restaurant over that 20-year period was pretty astounding, honestly. I worked in finance at the time, and people in finance like to claim they work hard, but I would argue no one really works as hard as a frontline service worker, whether it's in the restaurant field or otherwise. And, I think with restaurants specifically, it's an incredibly high bar to get everything right? At the same time, you are a marketing agency, of a food factory, a customer service and relationship management business, as well as somehow trying to run inventory and your supply chain profitably. So you're really looking at sort of 4 or 5 different businesses, each of which require their own specialties, happening in a single, inside a single 4-wall box. And I think nailing all 4 of those things consistently, day after day, it's hard to do one of those things relentlessly for 365 days a year, let alone 4 or 5 of them so consistently. And then on top of that, you are ultimately just hoping people come back. You are hoping that enough things go right on a day-to-day basis that someone says, you know what, I enjoyed the experience and I'm looking forward to coming back again. How that kind of ties into my experience with Bikky specifically, again, I saw my mother-in-law doing that firsthand for an extended period of time, and I walked in one day and she was looking at a delivery tablet and she was writing down a phone number off the tablet. I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I recognize this customer's name on the tablet. They must be a loyal guest, and so I'm just going to call them and see if they had a good experience. I was like, that's baller. I don't think anybody's ever called me after a delivery order before. And then 2 days later, we're at her house, and she's like, help me with something on the computer. And she was sitting in front of her open table dashboard, and she was trying to export all the email addresses. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, all these people made a reservation. I want to email them. I want to see if they had a good experience, if they come back, if there's something we can do better. And I think those 2 moments back to back are what really started my obsession, for lack of a better term, with this idea of, you're in the hospitality business, in the business of making feel guests welcome, and restaurant operators don't really know, because of the demands of the business, they don't really know anything about the person behind the transaction. They don't know who they are, if they're a loyal guest, what makes them more loyal, what makes them stop coming back, and all the data is there, right? Phone numbers from delivery tablets, online ordering data, reservation data, loyalty data, all the data is there. There's just no unified view of the guest, and then there's no sort of intuitive way for an operator to say, okay, I have all this data, I understand my guests and what they're doing, and now I know how to improve my business with this data. And so that's sort of been the mission of Bikky. We call ourselves a customer data platform, but that's really been the mission of Bikky since day one. It's helping restaurant operators access as much of their customer data as possible, turning it into insights that they can take action on to ultimately improve the guest experience and, of course, drive incremental sales as a result.
Right on. That's fascinating. So when were you founded? And you mentioned New York City. Is that confirmed where you're located there? And then, what's your service area? Can you handle restaurant tours all over the country?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yes, we're based in New York, but I started the business 7.5 years ago now at this point. And honestly, it was probably too early. No one cared about data in 2017, 2018.
Right.
And I think where the switch flipped was during the pandemic, when you had businesses go 100% digital overnight. And we had a lot of operators who I had spoken to in the preceding 3 years come back to me and say, look, I never see my guests anymore because of shelter-in-place orders. I don't know who I'm serving. I don't know how well really my business is doing. Can you, you're the data guy. You're the data person that I've been talking to. Can you help me access this data and understand it? And so, what I say to my family and friends is the only silver lining of the pandemic was that it was an accelerant for our business in that regard. And we've been fortunate to grow now to serve, I think we're live in around 5,000 restaurants across the country. And there is sort of, because it is a purely software business, there's no limit to who we can serve in the U.S. So we have clients in New York and the Southeast and Chicago and L.A. and San Francisco, et cetera. So really proud to power restaurants across the country.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, my show is all about people and organizations driving Michigan's vibrancy and sustainability and cool factor. And while you're a New York-based company, but I'm grateful to have you on, because I got to tell you, nothing triggers like my neighbors, right? The man on the street, the woman on the street, the people that I talk to more, their satisfaction with where they live seems to stem almost not exclusively, of course, but by restaurants. Hey, my favorite restaurant just closed, or this restaurant's so cool, or this new restaurant just opened up, but I worry that they're not going to make it. And so I felt it really important to bring you on just to let my restaurant listeners, because I have several, understand that your platform exists, even though you're not a Michigan-based company. So I snuck you in, just so you know. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it. I mean, we work, I think it's funny. It's funny we talk about Michigan. One of our most prominent clients is a brand called Beyond Juicery and Eatery, which is based in Detroit.
Okay.
And, you think about, there are about 48 units, I believe, across Detroit as well as parts of Ohio. And, it's interesting. Some of the things, there are a group of folks who the thing that they care about is engaging guests and providing healthy, vibrant, fresh options across smoothies, juices, wraps, salads, bowls for their local communities. And the way they do that is by basically launching anywhere from 8 to 20 new menu items a year. And, if we step back and we think about, we've talked about data a couple times so far, but when you step back and you think about, okay, what can I do with this data? Most operators, especially folks like Beyond Juicery, when they would launch a menu item, they would say, okay, it's 4% of sales. But is that good? Is that bad? You don't really know, because at the end of the day, all you have is really top-line sales to tell you as a metric of success. And with our platform, because we pull in all this data from their point-of-sale system, from their online ordering provider, from their loyalty provider, we can go a level deeper and we can say, hey, that new smoothie that you launched, it's bringing in new guests. Those guests come back twice as fast as someone who orders something off the regular menu. When they come back, they spend more money and they stick around longer. And so you go from, on one extreme, just saying it's 4% of sales and not knowing if it's good or bad, to getting really good insight on if you are doing the things that actually move the needle for the business, bringing in new customers, bringing them back, bringing them more often, enticing them to spend more money with your brand, and hopefully turning them into loyal regulars. And so I think that's a really great example. Like, as you mentioned, we're not Michigan-based, unfortunately, but we do power brands in Michigan to what I would call have the same level of tools and access to data as some other prominent Michigan-based brands like Domino's.
Okay.
The largest brands have long had access to these types of tools, and the way we think about it is how do we give the other 99.9% of restaurants the same capabilities to really level the playing field?
Well, I want to unpack some of that, but first I want to give a tip of the cap to our friends at Wagner Financial. Are you ready to make smart financial decisions? Wagner Financial offers a proven process for financial transformation, empowering individuals at all stages. Whether you're just starting out, nearing retirement, or anywhere in between, stop feeling unsure about your financial path. Wagner Financial can help you undergo this financial transformation, so schedule a consultation today to discuss your individual needs and discover how Wagner Financial can help you by visiting wagner-financial.com or call them at 517-853-3367. So you gave us a good example, and you talked about some of these really big hitters that have this data, but it sounds like a lot of these restaurants have data, but it doesn't provide them with what I'll call maybe just like a dashboard. Is that essentially what Bikky provides, is some sort of a extrapolation of data that already exists, or maybe tools to gather more data that they're not currently collecting, and then specifically the ability to use that data in a usable fashion?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So the sort of nuts and bolts of it is we'll integrate with your point of sale system. So Square, Toast, Revel, Brink, we've got multiple POS integrations. So we'll integrate with your POS system, with your online ordering system, with your loyalty platform if you have one, with your reservation platform if you have one, et cetera. we'll basically build profiles on every new guest. So if a guest orders online and we see their phone number, email address for the first time, we'll say, oh, this is a new guest. And then if they order again the next day and it's the same email address and phone number, we'll update their profile. And so we are constantly mapping, we like to think of ourselves as basically like the source of truth for understanding how many new guests you have, how many repeat guests you have, what your true frequency is, et cetera. And then from there, we layer on all the dashboards on top of it. And I think the high-level way to think about it is, as a restaurant operator, you are constantly doing things to grow your business, right? You are running a marketing campaign, you're launching a menu item, you're doing a promo. If you're a little bigger or you work with an agency, you're running paid ads on social platforms as an example. And again, at the end of the day, you don't really know outside of sales went up or sales went down if you're having true success and what the extent of that success is. And because we get all the customer level data, we can basically report and say, here's how many new guests you acquired last week when you launched that marketing campaign. Here's how many people came back 30, 60, 90 days after they used that particular promo that flyer that you dropped in your local community. And so we can really track, again, like true incrementality of your marketing, menu, and operational decisions. I think that's probably the highest level way to think about it.
Sure.
The lowest hanging fruit, honestly, is like there's so many use cases of where this data can impact people's businesses. The lowest of low hanging fruits that we find is often in one-to-one personalized marketing, customer engagement. We work with a full service brand here in New York, and because we get all of a brand's data, we can actually predict when a customer is going to stop coming back, right? We can say, Chris is a monthly guest and it's been 40 days and he's late. He's missed his frequency. He's not coming back. And we can say Abhinav is a weekly guest and it's been 10 days. He's late. You should reach out to him to try and bring him back, because if you wait 30 days for someone like Abhinav, you've probably already lost them. And so we can take this sort of predictive understanding of guest behavior, and then we can just help the restaurant fire off an email and recover that guest and stay top of mind for the brand. And so we have that full service brand that I mentioned at the top, where they've been running that type of email campaign for the last 6 months, and they've generated an incremental $40,000 in sales from just that one email over the last 6 months. And so like data can be a nebulous and scary thing, and folks can say, I don't have time for it, I don't have time to use it. My mother-in-law used to say that to me all the time, especially in the early days. And I think one of the things we've gotten really good at is understanding how busy the life of an operator is and how many priorities they have, and helping them find sort of seamless and high-impact ways to use the data to do the thing they care about, which is drive growth in their business.
Right on. Okay. So talk to me a little bit about the companies or the restaurant groups that you are targeting, and then who aren't you targeting? Like, who might it not be a good fit for? Because there are restaurants all over the spectrum. You mentioned Domino's, but
Totally.
Then there's, Fred's Pizza. That's a standalone shop down the street. Who should be giving you a call and who maybe shouldn't be giving you a call?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, right now where we are is we typically focus on restaurants with 10 locations and up. We found that's really the sweet spot for us, just because, again, I take my mother-in-law as an example. So many single store or 1 or 2 unit operators, they're working in the business, right? That's all they have time to do is work in the business rather than work on the business. And so we say 10 units and up is typically who we tend to go after. We do have clients that are smaller. We do work with 3, 4, 5 unit brands as well. And so I would say it's less about size being the right proxy and more so, do you have somebody internally, a marketing person, a finance person, that can sit with the product and get these insights and help you put the plan into motion to basically operationalize the insights. So I think long term, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so is it that so a small operator, is it that they don't have enough data to have you give them a good dashboard, or is it that it's just sometimes isn't cost effective, or is not cost effective because you're giving them information, but they just don't have the bandwidth to act upon the information you're giving them?
I think it's a mix of 2 and 3, to be totally honest.
Okay.
What I say to smaller operators, and that's typically folks with less than 5 units.
Yep.
What I say to them is like, look, when you have less than 5 units, when you're at that 1 to 4 mark, the thing more so than having data, again, you are living and breathing your business. You're probably spending time in every store at least 1 day a week. right? You're either moving from every store in a 1 or 2 day spell, or you're dedicating time between stores every single day of the week. And so you know intuitively in your gut what's working and what's not working in the business. And the best thing you can do, especially when you're sub-5 locations, the best thing you can do is just make sure that you consistently crush it on the food quality, on the guest experience, on hospitality, because at the end of the day, you don't really need data when you're sub-5 units. You don't really need data to tell you whether or not people are coming back, right? Your teams are going to tell you, or you're going to see it firsthand when you're working the line, as an example. And so what I say to folks is, on smaller, is like, you don't need to pay for my, the software subscription that we charge, because I don't know what we could necessarily tell you that you don't already know about the business, because you are living and breathing the business every single day by just being in the stores, being in the shops.
Right on.
And so I think it's that combination of you're living and breathing it, and so your gut probably has an inkling, all the way to, what is data really going to tell you that you don't already know? And so I think like when people start to get above 5 and they say, I'm at 5, I want to go to 7, or I want to go to 10, and I want to scale, and they need to scale their operations, then I feel like we become a much better fit based on where the platform is today. I think that potentially changes in the future. As a data company, we are very interested, and it is a buzzword, but we are very interested in AI and interested in the ability to start pushing insights to people so that they don't even need to look at a dashboard, but they can, over the long term, hopefully just get served with the 2 or 3 things that they need to know to fix a particular store at a particular time. But we're building towards that, and we're not there today.
Right on. So before I thank another sponsor of ours, can you just remind people what your website is so people can start pulling that up as they listen to me read something?
Absolutely, yeah. So the website is Bikky.com, Bikky.com.
Perfect. Well, this episode is brought to you by the Michigan Rise Pre-Seed Fund, providing early-stage funding to Michigan-based startups. Since 2020, Michigan Rise has helped high-tech, high-growth startup companies achieve commercial and technical milestones through capital formation strategies, talent development, and customer acquisition tactics. With financing options for every stage of the entrepreneurial journey, Michigan Rise significantly increases the impact of new ideas and research. Visit MichiganRise.com to discover how Michigan Rise can help you fuel your startup's growth. Michigan Rise is supported by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and the Michigan State University Research Foundation. So talk to me about, proofs in the pudding. What kind of results do restaurateurs who have your platform get? Do you measure those returns and results, and like what specifically do they do with the information that they receive from your product?
Yeah, it's a great question. Of course, the restaurant margin or the restaurant industry margins are thin. That's no surprise. And so, like, just to take a step back, right? I think 20 years ago, restaurants used to be 20% margin businesses, and now they're 3 to 5% margin businesses. And so, if you look at the large brands that we talked about a little earlier, Domino's, Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, like they've all maintained 20% plus store level margins, I think. And part of that is they've had the time, the resources, and the talent to invest in accessing their data and using their data to grow their businesses. And so, the way we think about it is data can fundamentally transform the business model of the restaurant industry. It can help operators build faster growing as well as more profitable businesses, and that sort of philosophy powers everything we do here at Bikky. In terms of tangible results, and as you said, proof being in the pudding, like I'll give you a very tangible example. We work with they're about 15 units now, smoothie and juice concept out of Chicago. Starting to expand across the Midwest, a little more into Indiana right now. And something that they were doing was, again, another smoothie and a juice and bowl and wrap concept. And something that they would do is whenever someone was lapsed, whenever someone hasn't been to the brand in 30 to 45 days, they would just send an email that says, I miss you, here's a promo. Use this promo for, a discount on your next order. And that single email, I'm sure every operator listening to this is familiar with that type of, lapse journey campaign. That single email had a 5% conversion rate. So every 100 people that got it, 5% would use the promotion. When they used our platform, they started segmenting the customer base based on, are your most frequently ordered items a smoothie, or is your most frequently ordered item a wrap? So really actually just the most basic level of differentiation between, are you a smoothie customer or a food customer? and they started personalizing the offers to those lapsed customers. So a smoothie customer would get a smoothie discount, and a wrap customer would get a wrap discount. And since launching that, their conversion rates have tripled. They've gone from 5% to 15%. And to give you a sense of like magnitude of impact, the typical conversion rate on an email is around 3 to 4%. And so they are, again, they're best in class by double-digit percentage points in terms of just using the data to what I would call level up a very simple and I would say tried and true method for trying to bring customers back into the restaurant. And so that was a pretty significant results there. But that's one of my favorite examples, again, of how data can help. There are so many low-hanging fruit opportunities for data to just materially improve outcomes in your business. And communicating with lapsed customers based on their favorite menu item is one easy way to do that.
Right on. Makes a lot of sense. So what does an agreement look like with Bikky? Is there a length of term or a fee per restaurant? Obviously, I'll let you quote for those who are inquiring directly, but generally speaking, how does an arrangement look like with you?
Yeah, typically our pricing starts at $200 per store per month, and then scales down from there, just depending on size. There's no setup fees, no onboarding fees, no implementation fees, nothing like that. And then our agreements start at 24 months. And I think that typically is because we want to establish a long-term partnership with the brands we work with. We want to be a meaningful part of their growth, and we want to be the leaders in helping them understand how data can transform their operations, their marketing, and ultimately their P&L.
Perfect. Well, as we kind of come to a close, is there anything I haven't asked you that you just are dying to get out to our audience?
I think the biggest thing is, data can be a scary. Data is what I like to call one of those apple pie positions. When you ask someone like, "Hey, do you want more data on your customers?" No one ever says no, because if you say no, you're like, "What's wrong with you?" In polite society, I don't think anybody ever says no to more data. But the problem I think where operators tend to get fearful is, I don't have time to use this. I don't know how it's going to help me. I haven't really bought a data tool before. And those are all very valid and very fair questions. I think the big thing I hope is that I've shared a couple low-hanging fruit, easy opportunities to use a little bit of data to do the most important thing, which is refine and extend an operator's unique vision of hospitality to their guests. Ultimately, that's what it all comes down to, and that's what we hope to support here at Bikky.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, we've been talking to the co-founder and CEO of Bikky, Mr. Abhinav Kapur, out in New York City, but helping restaurants all over the country. I think it's fascinating what you're doing. I wish you all the success in the world, because your success is going to mean success in the restaurants that we all love to frequent. And remind everyone, your website and social handles, things of that nature.
Sure, yeah. You can reach me directly, Abhinav at Bikky, Bikky.com. Website is Bikky.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's also where I'm most active.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And I'd love to give a final shout out to all of my loyal sponsors: Forsberg Real Estate, Wagoner Financial, Triterra Environmental, Good Marketing, Keller Williams Advantage and Team, Michigan Rise, and the attorneys at Foster Swift. All fantastic people who are worth the call. And if you found the show as a one-off, I want to remind you to follow and subscribe to Michigan Reimagined on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts. This is Chris Buck signing off for Michigan Reimagined.